Things that tech today should bring back. Hello guys, so today's video is on things that are my opinion about tech today and that should be brought back. And this video is being re-recorded because I was hoping I could sound a little bit more colorful today. Yesterday I tried to record this video and it just did not come out the way I liked it. So we're just gonna try this again, okay? I really think that it's a nice topic for me to be talking about. It's just kind of fun for me. I'm not really a big person on tech, so my view might be a little bit limited. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into it and not waste too much time on the intro. So one thing I will say is the headphone jack. This one isn't that big of an inconvenience. You just buy the connector thingy. And obviously there's a niche situation of, oh, but what if I want to charge my phone and listen with wired headphones at the same time? And if you think that wired headphones are outdated, they are useful for one main reason. Most wireless Bluetooth headphones have a latency issue, even the good ones, right? So it's always better if you're going to do something like editing on your phone, you have to use the wired ones. So the second thing I want to talk about is optimized apps. So before phones and devices in general started having 10 gigabytes of RAM and all of that, apps were more optimized to work on slower devices. So basically, even on a slow device with a small amount of memory and etc., things would still run relatively smoothly just because of the way the apps were made to use as little data and etc. as possible. I don't really know how developing works, okay? I can understand that this is probably a tedious thing to do, and especially nowadays, there's not really a need for it because, oh, you can just get the next high-spec thing that is capable. But the thing about optimization is that it helps so that people don't have to upgrade. It's not everybody who has the means to upgrade or even wants to upgrade, right? So it's just better when things run smoothly, whether your device is old or not. Another thing that needs to be brought back or needs to be toned down a little bit in this case is less crazy specs on phones. Phones nowadays have huge cameras. They have a bunch of RAM, a bunch of storage. Like, there are the people who use these things, but for me, I feel like it's unnecessary. Not just because I don't use it, but because if the specs are too high, it gets to a point where it's not even practical to have it on a phone. For example, why do you need 1 terabyte of storage on your phone when there's hard drives, there's computers, right? Desktop computers, that when you have these things on it, they're gonna run smoother and they're gonna just be less of a pain to deal with, right? The screen is so tiny that it makes it inconvenient to be storing and dealing with a bunch of stuff on it. I'm not saying that like everybody has to have the smallest amount of storage on your phone or whatever, but it just gets to a point where you're being ridiculous. There are the people that need that RAM. You're going to be doing heavy editing, heavy whatever on your phone. That's understandable, but at that point, maybe you should get a tablet because, again, the screen is so small that it just makes it kind of uncomfortable to even use these features on your phone. I feel like the removal of the SIM card and forcing everybody to switch to eSIM by iOS is not really necessary. I meant to put this as a disclaimer at the beginning of the video, and I'm sorry I forgot, okay? But I'm gonna do it now. I use and love Samsung and Windows, okay? But I don't hate iOS. I'm just trying to be unbiased here. I just feel like forcing everybody to switch to eSIM is not necessary. I'm not against eSIMs as a whole. I personally prefer a physical SIM card. And maybe you can use an eSIM when you're traveling. Nowadays, you store a lot of things online. But if you store everything online, you can easily forget about it, right? So I feel like a physical SIM card is completely fine. And it's something that we've been doing for a very long time now. So I feel like just throwing it away is kind of waste. Sometimes it's because the old is better that we keep it, right? Or because it's practical, right? And this is one of those cases, in my opinion. Okay, enough about that, okay? The next thing I don't like is phones being released every year and devices in general. You guys know that Samsung, Apple, Windows, they all have ecosystems, especially nowadays. People don't just buy laptops and phones from them anymore. They buy headphones, smartwatches. Some of them buy the smart home devices like Alexa and stuff like that. And that's not always bad, but what's bad is that all of these things are being re-released every single year, even when they don't necessarily have meaningful updates to them, and it's waste. The incentive to buy the phone is no longer about actually getting upgrades, but it's about fitting in with your peers, having the nice new thing that's just came out. And it creates a toxic consumerist culture. Not only that, but it's just a waste of resources for everybody involved. Because if there's a phone that has a bunch of hype, but there's no real substance to it, if you buy it, right, you're just going to end up selling it anyways. And who knows, maybe not a lot of people are interested in that device, and it ends up being a bust for everyone. So when we're soullessly rehashing products just because we want to make a profit from them, right, we are creating waste. Yes, this point is about the environment, but it's also about our culture in general and about giving people who are loyal to your company a meaningful thing, right? If somebody wants to buy something for you, it should be a meaningful thing that you've created for them. It shouldn't just be last year's product with a few new updates. Sometimes the reason it's like that is because there's no updates that they can think to add. And that's why it's just better if you don't release it at all. If there's little updates that you want to make on the phone, let that be a software update instead of it being a completely new device, right? The phones, like maybe they get minor bumps, but at least they still get some hardware changes. What this peeves me with the more than the phones is earbuds. So I feel like the re-release frequency of products, in order to make them more special, in order to give the users a better experience, and in order to help reduce waste, should be reduced to maybe once every 3 years, for example. So this is another one this is kind of a personal one though. Biometrics. I don't have any biometrics set up on my phone. Samsung's Face ID is not as good as Apple's. I don't know how much it's improved since, it was first released or whatever. I don't really care. But the fingerprint one is fine, but I don't have that either. I just feel like my password is enough. Now, maybe some people don't, right? Maybe that's why some people use it. But for me, I just personally don't really use biometrics. And I feel like it's a lot of data to be putting on a phone, okay? My bank account password is somewhere on my phone, obviously, right? So, of course, they have that data. So you're adding fingerprint to that as well. It's just too much. It's too much data for the companies to be having when they already have a lot of your data. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist person. There are places where you do use biometrics, such as immigration, right? But at least there it's necessary and it's a governmental thing that you're dealing with. So it makes sense for it to be there. But for the phone, I just feel like it's going a step too far. Okay. All right. This is kind of a complex topic. Google and Android, the way Google is implemented on most Android phones. So I'm going to be talking about Samsung here because this is the brand I have been using. So what I want to say here is that I feel like certain apps should be done by Google, but certain apps, I feel like the Android phones should handle them themselves. So a good example is, for right now, Samsung Messages. I do not like that Samsung Messages is now going to be discontinued in favor of Google Messages. Granted, Google Messages is better. On Samsung Messages, if somebody sends you an image, it's going to be grainy and pixelated and whatever. And same with the video. And you cannot get reactions on Samsung Messages, but with Google Messages, you can do those things. And when somebody sends you a picture, it's perfectly fine. I'm not saying that Google Messages is bad. You can't customize it as much, okay? But I just personally don't like it. And I feel like us being forced to switch to Google Messages is just Samsung giving up on their original apps. This makes me a little sad because the more that you're giving your phone to Google, right, to handle all of these apps, the more that your phone is more about Google and less about Samsung, right? Or more about Google and less about the brand, right? Maybe they could have improved on it, right? Samsung Internet is still there, even though there's many compatible and better options such as Microsoft Edge, Chrome, Opera, Firefox. So why are they discontinuing this? Okay, I just feel like it's a missed opportunity. There's already a lot of Google apps on our phones. Another Google app I use, and this one is actually more out of preference, is Gboard. I've noticed that Gboard has better swipe typing. It's very seamless. It's basically as if it's part of the phone's UI. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is I use Gboard because I prefer the swipe typing on it. It's just more accurate than the Samsung one. The Samsung one I've seen can be accurate, but I have predictive text off, and with that off, it's kind of inaccurate. I don't know if it's going to be more accurate if it's on. I just find the Gboard one better. And also, I like the layout of the Gboard one better. So yes, I kind of do like it for preference reasons, but it's also partially because the Samsung one is not competent in some ways. I feel like if the Samsung one was made better, I might actually switch back. And they only support 4 keyboard languages at a time, which is also kind of limiting. So I wish they didn't do that either. But yeah, that's what my criticism is for Samsung keyboard. But what am I trying to say with all of this? I'm trying to say that I don't want too much of Android to rely on Google. Google has their own Pixel phones, okay, already. And there are some apps that all Android phones have to use on Google, right? Such as Google Play Store and Google Maps. I'm not saying we need to stop using those, but certain apps such as Mail, the messages, again, those things can be handled by the phone companies because it gives the phone more flavor. They're pre-installed on the phone anyways. So if they're there and you can't even use them on the phone because they're not competent, then it's a waste of space and it's a waste of time getting rid of them. When somebody gets like a new phone or whatever, they don't always want to just sit there and delete all of their bloatware apps. Not everybody's willing to go through and do that. So instead of making them do that, either make the apps competent or don't offer them at all. I feel like it is important for these companies to offer a few apps, at least of their own, so that there's a little bit of flavor in the phone, and it just makes the experience a lot more memorable and desirable. Another thing that we can talk about this with, and this is in general, not limited to Google and Android, is good copying versus bad copying. There are certain things that tech companies do need to copy from each other. For example, I like that nowadays iPhones can be wirelessly charged, but there's a bad version of copying, and this example is from Samsung keyboard and Google keyboard versus the Apple keyboard. So Apple has a new feature on their keyboards that you can use the space bar to control where the cursor is, and Google and Samsung copied that. I don't even use that feature. I have it off because we had our own version of that, and that was just using your finger. There was this little pointer thingy that shows you where the cursor is. That's blatant copying, and I feel like they shouldn't have done that from Apple. Another thing I don't like is when this wasn't really Apple's fault, but I didn't like that Apple was forced to switch to Type-C. There are a lot of people with lightning cables already. We associate it with Apple, we all do, right? So what was the point of switching? All you have to do is buy the correct cable, and every single device comes with the cable that it needs to charge it. I just feel like this was very unnecessary, right? And less uniqueness. I think everybody knows where I'm going with this. Everything is all screen, no bezel. You're either a notch or a punch hole screen, right? And everything is now OLED as well. iPhone copied from Samsung. And the problem with it isn't the fact that everything looks clean and stuff like. The problem is that there's no more originality. So I really loved when Samsung phones in 2015, 2016 had those light up touch buttons for back and for the recent tabs. I'm not saying they should go back to that, but I think it was very unique. And Samsung is not the only person guilty of, not being very creative in design or whatever anymore. But we need to see more uniqueness in general. And this reflects how today's society is in general, right? Nowadays, it's more about looking polished and looking unique. Right?
Also, thinking of this topic, I'm thinking that it would be nice if even when phones do get software updates, some things that are on them still say unique to the phone, so that the phone still retains a little bit of personality. Devices and stuff get updates, then every single phone ends up looking the same, and it feels like some of these things could be left behind or retained.
Okay, let's just move on to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is realistic versus semi-realistic icons. So what I mean by semi-realistic is probably something like Samsung in 2017. So let's take the settings icon, for example. It's just the shape of a gear. So you understand what it's meant to represent, but it's not an actual picture of the item, right? I feel like this is a good compromise to oversimplification versus completely realistic icons. Because let's be real here. Yes, realistic icons are beautiful, but if everything was given a realistic icon, it would hurt your eyes, probably. It would just be too overwhelming. And it's unnecessary. Why does a basic app that every single phone has need to have an extremely realistic icon that makes it look more special than it actually is? I'm not saying that specifically because I have this take, nobody can make a realistic settings icon or whatever. But what I'm saying is that it makes sense that not everything is realistic on the phone. But I feel like if you're not going to do realistic, at least do semi-realistic. I feel like the Samsung 2017 icons are a good compromise because you're still seeing what they are the shape of, but but they're not so rounded and bubbly that they just look more annoying. Realistic icons are pretty much a thing of the past, but if they were to be brought back, I feel like they should be brought back for a specific app because it's niche. So when they see that, they automatically see that, oh, this is my very special app. It's not just a random stock app on their device, right? So basically, it helps you to differentiate the importance of apps on your device. We definitely need to ditch oversimplified icons, but I feel like semi-realistic and realistic icons do have a place, okay? Another thing I meant to mention that phones nowadays can give up is those little extra buttons. They typically add these buttons, maybe it's for an AI assistant, the camera app, a special app that you yourself tune them to on the phone. So mainly, right, most phones have a volume up, volume down, and a on button, right? But they now add this extra button that you can tune to whatever you want on your phone. I don't want to say it's unnecessary because it can be useful for some people, but for someone like me, like, I'm just going to search for the app that I want. Even the S Pen, I'm kind of used to the S Pen. Even that, I don't really mess with it that much. You know, if anything, certain Samsung phones don't even need that button because you can tune the button on the S Pen rather than this button. It's just gimmicks on a phone. And speaking of gimmicks, I'm not going to call the S Pen a gimmick. To me, I like using it for certain things, but there are certain people who the only reason they buy the Ultra phones is because they want the high specs. They don't actually really care about the pen. I'm not saying this to shame those people, but I'm saying this to say that I wish that the Note series was back so that the people who buy the phones in the Note series are specifically buying it for the stylus so that the stylus doesn't go to waste. I just feel like they should make a different lineup so that you can still get the highest spec phone without having the stylus in it, right? They can have their Ultras and then they can have the Note phones on the side, which are maybe similar or the same as the Ultra, but just with the pen in it, so that the people who still want the high specs but don't want the pen can still have the phone, right? Another thing I don't really like about phones nowadays, and this is becoming standard, iPhones have actually had this for longer, but still, okay? Built-in voice assistants, AI assistants, it's just, I feel like it's too much. AI is in general crazy already. Currently right now, I do use like an AI thing to transcript my video, so it just makes it more helpful because I don't have to type it out. I was completely against AI, but there are some good uses for it. But that being said, this, in my opinion, at least for certain types of people, this is not one of them. If I want to find an app on my phone, if I want to call somebody, I'm going to do it myself. Maybe there's some people that like, oh, you don't want to go through the pressure of going through your phone to look for that, but that's why you need to organize your phone, right? If you have something do everything for you and you're completely capable of doing that thing, yes, that is more convenient, but that makes you into a lazy person. And this is the kind of mentality that you cultivate when you don't work smarter or harder, you just don't work at all, right? It's kind of a mentality thing for me is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't make you a lazy person if you tell Bixby or Siri or Google to call somebody for you, but it's the mentality behind it that I don't like and I don't want to attach myself to. And then the next time you go and do it for yourself, you become incapable, right? So you're just making yourself incompetent and lazy by relying on these things. It's also really weird. Just think about it, right? You're talking in the air to something the way you should be talking to God, and that's the way I see it. Now, I'm also talking to a device, okay? But I am going to be uploading this video to YouTube for other people to hear, and that device is not responding back to me. I'm not having a conversation with the device. So I just find the whole concept of voice assistants and all of that weird, and also that it makes you lazy. Guys, you can call me a sucker for this, but I do not see stuff like Android Auto, Apple CarPlay as necessary. Just use Bluetooth and play YouTube on your phone. Maybe it's because I'm not used to it and stuff, but I just don't really see it as necessary. The most basic thing that most people have in their cars is a phone mount. So like, that's what you can use instead of using those apps. And again, it's a whole another thing that you have to update it. I want to make a video about cars on this similar topic, that things that they need to fix as well. And I'll probably have to include this in it, but I'm also including it here because this is about phones and stuff like that. All right, guys, printer compatibility. It has always been so weird. Even when the printer is on, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I feel like you should either be able to use the cable or just do the regular Bluetooth connection. I don't think you need actual Wi-Fi to, you know what I mean? Anyways, I think that's enough for this video. I've been talking for about 30 minutes. My phone is dying. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye!